Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. Have you ever wondered how to achieve psycho,
Psychosis.
Oh no.
Yeah.
psychosis, spiritual transformation? Stick around. It's a tongue twister. Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. Your assignment is to do 5 times fast psycho-spiritual transformation. Ready, go.
Psycho-spiritual transformation.
Apparently,
He's doing it.
it's more than I can comprehend. We've been gone. We were off last week, so we had a little break, and apparently my tongue is still on vacation. But we're here, so that's good.
Well, I love the energy here. It's just like I'm getting adrenaline pumping through my veins.
Look, we just go with it. However it goes, and it's going to be amazing. And somebody will be like, "Whoa, what is this dude trying to say?
What are they
I
even
think I'm
talking
going to watch
about?
this video today."
These guys are crazy.
A little bit. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I'm Ryan Morris. This is Nick Smith. He's the author of The Giants and the Smalls. Freaking amazing book. Go get it. Amazon. Find it. GiantsandSmalls.com.
Find it, click it, buy it, share it, all that
Come
stuff.
find us on YouTube if you want to watch the rerun, or if you don't have time to watch the whole thing today. That's where we put it. That's where we place it. And we've got an amazing tribe on a tribe of giants, big community of people that love to support each other, and a little bit of positivity every single dang day of the week. Here you go. Nick, do you want to introduce our guest or catch us up on any other announcements we have?
No, okay. So one announcement is okay. So we'll go backward here. The Upgrade Your Life tour with Les Brown, Kevin Sorbo, Waldo Waldman, Hercules. It's big. It's coming up in September. So if you're going to be at that, make sure you get your ticket before it's gone. And so the upgradeyourlifetour.com is where you can find tickets there. So outside of that, I'm going to introduce our guest, and we're going to get going.
Love it.
We're going to dive in. We're going to dive into the dark and the light.
Everything.
So we've got Dr. Daniel Harner. Some people call him a psycho-spiritual mentor, therapist, healer, spiritual guide, wizard, Carl Jung 2.0, researcher, and explorer. The truth is he's a blend of all of that. He's originally from Austria, but transplanted himself to Sedona, Arizona at the age of 24. In order to deeply immerse himself in the study and practice of psychotherapy and psycho-spiritual transformation and healing, alongside some of the world's most esteemed psychotherapists, spiritual leaders, researchers, and healers. For him, there's no greater passion and satisfaction but to be unceasingly immersed in transformation and the realization of truth, beauty, and love. His services are available to those who feel a burning desire and calling in their soul to go on a journey to return home within, to reunite with the source of love. His formal education consists of several psychology degrees, not just one, multiples, right? A bachelor and a master of science in psychology, a master of arts degree in counseling psychology, and a doctorate in clinical psychology. So aside from his one-on-one work with clients, he's also an active researcher and author in the field of conscious-based medicine and psychology, and a member of the William Tiller Foundation for psychoenergetic science, where he explores the frontiers of psychology, new physics, and the healing arts. And we're lucky enough to have him on with us today. Welcome to the show.
It's an honor to be here. It's going to be so much fun.
That is a hell of a bio. Holy cow.
My bio's like, Ryan likes to sleep in, sometimes late.
His favorite hobbies are Monster Energy drinks.
Yeah.
And, baseball cards.
Oh, cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, here's what I imagine, and what we love to explore in this is your journey. So we go through all of the 12 journeys that we have as giants, and we explore everything from the beginning to now. And we get that this isn't the end of it. There's more to come in Daniel Harner, but I would imagine, just hearing that bio, that you walked out of the womb with suitcases in hand and a degree in hand, and you were golden and good to go. Is that the case?
Yeah.
Like,
So I'm gonna
Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna I'm gonna take off all the shields, armors, and protections. I'm gonna just be really honest with you. So
yeah, perfect. Let's
I
do it.
know that's why we're here, right? So
Yeah.
gonna have a
That
hard
and for
talk.
fun.
Yeah.
Who were you before all that? Like, what was Daniel like before any of those titles, certificates, degrees?
I come from extremely humble beginnings, you know.
Yep.
So like I grew up with my mom, my dad, my grandma, and my grandpa in the same house. So it was the five of us. The three of us lived downstairs, and the grandpa and grandma lived upstairs. They were the leaders. The grandma was the boss, and it was a pretty chaotic household. So it was. I'm born by nature as an extremely sensitive individual, and shy and introverted. So that was the personality I came out with from the womb. You know, so looking at the world and being highly impressionable, you know, being extremely spiritual child. And the world affected me a great deal because I was so open, you know, like I was extremely open. And being in a chaotic household like that completely blew my fuses. So it's like it took me my whole life to really reorganize my experience into an adult, you know, because there's a beginning, in the beginning, you get your wires crossed and then you spend the rest of your life uncrossing the wires, you know. So it's like, it just takes a few moments when you're a kid and then you're like, nothing makes sense anymore. And then you go to psychology school and get lots of degrees and move to America and try to figure this shit out, right? So,
And then try to make sure that you don't pass it on to your kids.
yeah. And there's another fun fact, you know, not a lot of people know this about me, but I was born in a small town in Austria that's close to Germany, and it also happens to be the birth town of Adolf Hitler. So for me, that was something that was a lot to break down and digest for me. I mean, not that I am Adolf Hitler, but I share the same birthplace with him.
Yeah.
So that was something that affected me. That took a while for me to unpack. And when I was 3 years old, I think it really happened when I got my wires crossed. So I think before age 3, I was in a pristine state, let's say it like that. I think I was in a place at oneness with God, and I felt like the world was beautiful. And when I was 3 years old, my mom dropped me off at kindergarten, and just something switched, and it's almost like entering a different world of being with strangers, and just a fear overtook me, and I lost myself. I forgot who I was, and I felt separate from God, and I felt separate from my mom, and a profound sadness hit me. And from then on, I became a defensively regulated human being that was fearful and fantasized about things, and just lost himself, you know. So it's really, that's where my journey started, you know. It's like at 3 years old, it's almost like my birth, a second birth in a way, you know. So it's like, okay, that's when I lost myself, and the ego came in, and my false identity came in, and just, yeah. So
Let's talk about that if we can hang here for a minute, because
really,
my understanding, and this is where you can help clarify, is that from the ages of 0 to 25, we're in development. So up until about the age of 25, we're in development. Then it starts downgrading at age 24. So it's perfect, right? When you get it all together, you start breaking apart over time, right? But during that, you say the wires are crossed, you know, during that developmental stage, you start to create your identity. And like what you did is you go into school and you create this identity for protection. This identity as a 3-year-old that's protecting yourself. Can you speak to the wiring that occurs for somebody that might be listening that says, you know, I had this experience back when I was a child, or there was this big event in my life and it changed me? Can you talk about, do you know much on the neurobiology? Can you speak to that a little bit of what happens during those stages when you talk about crossing wires?
yeah, I mean, I think, you know, like the psychology just often talks from a place of psychology. You know, why I call my approach psycho-spiritual is because the spiritual dimension of development is often left out. And even as an infant and even as a young kid, we're very spiritual, you know, like we live very close to the other world. Like our senses haven't organized in this way yet, where we think in three-dimensional reality and time and space and distance the way we do as adults, you know. So at some point, it's just like our brain, and I think, gives us this sort of categorical thinking of black and white and duality. And that can hit you hard. And for me, that hit me very hard, because I'm in love with God. For me to not experience God in his fullness is like as a traumatizing experience. So when you grow up, you know, in the beginning, you just really swim in a soup of energy when you're a young kid, and everything is sort of like seen and felt in a very different way than when you're, like, say, past 2 years old. So and also attachment, you know, people, you know, like young kids have attachments to their caregivers and to the people that they love. And when that is sort of like disrupted early on, or not transitioned well into an independence that's healthy, then it can be extremely deeply traumatizing. You know, it kind of follows you your whole life, and it usually comes out in relationships. You know, you might be well put together in your mind and all by your own and be very smart, but when you go to relationships, you often fail, and you often see, like, oh my God, I'm doing things that are really irrational. You know, so that's what I am.
Right. It was like that guy out there.
Yeah.
It's true though. So as you're saying that, I had this imagining of this crab. There are these crabs in the ocean that they'll go and just put things on their shell for protection, and they'll grab anything and they'll just put it on. Sometimes you'll see octopus do it, or octopi. I don't know how you say that, it's plural, but they'll go do the same thing, and they'll look like this crab, and they'll put things on to shield themselves and kind of disappear into the environment. And I'd imagine as we're growing up that we're in a way doing that. If we're not getting the attachment style, then we create or put on or adapt something to kind of fill that need.
100%.
Is that accurate?
100%. Yes, the false self, you know, it's really a protective self that lives defensively. It's no longer an immediate experience of life. It's no longer like an open experience with life. It's then filtered through a defensive layer that distorts everything. You know? So that's really what the ego is. What we call the ego. It's a defensive structure. Yeah.
The ego is everything that you put on you, right?
Yeah. It's
everything you take on. Okay. So how long was it before you had an awakening to that way of being? And is there anything else along that journey that was impactful that created that identity that you're talking about, the ego?
Yeah.
That was impactful in a way that made you maybe not show up fully?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, could write a book about this, and I could say a lot about all the different experiences that led to where I'm right now, but I make it really simple. So when I was 17, I realized that the adults around me didn't know anything. So it was like the light bulb went on. I thought, like, these people aren't as smart as I thought they were, you know. And you go to school and you look up to them and you hope that they're giving you the pearls of wisdom, but at some point you realize, like, they are just parroting what they were taught, and what they were taught is often not very smart. So at that point, I had a disillusionment happen, and I thought, like, oh God, I got to figure this shit out myself, you know. And at 17, it felt like a loneliness kind of hit me. It's like, wow, now I got to read the great books of the Western world, and I got to study philosophy and psychology and educate myself how to be a human being, because it's not going to come from out there. There's nobody out there that inspires me, you know. It's like a lot of people are drinking around me. A lot of people are doing things that don't make sense. So at that point, I became seriously interested in psychology and the study of the human personal growth development and consciousness expansion and all that. And Carl Jung inspired the hell out of me back in the days. I read his autobiography, and I felt like, wow, this is a scientist, psychologist, psychiatrist who's really able to articulate things that I feel intuitively to be true, you know. And that changed my whole world. And from that point on, I thought, like, what's the quickest way to become like him? And I said, like, it's going to be either medicine I'm going to study or psychology, because that's what really interested me. So that was sort of like the next shift in my awareness. And this is also the time when I became really interested in working with mind-altering substances like psychedelics. So that also interested me, because I thought, like, wow, there's a substance that takes that ego filter, that crab shell, away temporarily and shows you how the world was before I was hijacked by this ego structure, you know. It's almost like this reduction valve that filters out all the God information and just gives you this dumbed down human reality information, you know. It spits it out like that, and it's like, wow, how cool is that? So I became also really interested in that as well. being 17 and being in high school, I wasn't surrounded by like-minded people, so I had to do this all by myself, you know. And I had the dream is like, wouldn't it be cool to share this all with people that kind of speak my language at some point, you know? And I had no idea that I'm going to be talking to you guys today when I'm 40, you know, and now I'm surrounded with lots of people that I can have meaningful conversations with. But back then there was nobody, you know?
Yeah, interesting. I just picture you as this normal kid that, just like any normal teenager, decides I'm going to pursue Western philosophy and psychology. It just totally makes sense, right? Just like everybody watching this, we're just normal.
Yeah.
No, it's I would wonder, you know, at that point, there's an awakening of, look, the people that I'm around don't know what they're doing. They speak the speak, they parrot what they're saying. They know the languaging, but they're not living it. And so I need to find more for me. Did you, when you had that awareness, did you move immediately into, like you say, the observer of yourself, or were you very judgmental about yourself when you woke up to that?
Well, you know, as a 17-year-old, you still have a psychology of an adolescent, so it's very immature, you know. So I was very, very insecure and had very low self-esteem, and was not able to be an observer of myself in a loving way. You know, you're an observer of yourself in a very sort of like critical way. You know, others and yourself. You kind of question everything, including yourself. And that can sometimes look like surgery. You know,
yeah. Like when we talk about the 12 journeys, the second journey is awareness. And often people go into a space of judgment, self-judgment, and criticism, like you're saying.
Yeah.
And if we can move into the observer space, then it just opens up room for whatever is to be there. There's no judgment of it, just is. Yeah. And I find that very healing, because we can just move forward from there. We don't have to sit and battle out right and wrong and our whole history that we can't even touch, right?
Yeah.
So did you experience some grief in the realizations? Did you experience a sense of depression and sadness in the awakening to where you were versus where you at that point thought you should be? And even now, do you still experience grief?
Yeah, when I was 17, I experienced more of a sense of almost like anger, if you want to call it that, because almost like, God, I was like, I've been trusting these people for so long. It was like, you know, now I'm by myself. Like I became very cynical, so it became sort of like, yeah, just like a little, not rebellious outwardly, but inwardly, you know, just really questioning everything. And there wasn't a lot of grief. There wasn't a lot of self-honest processing in that way when I was 17. I wasn't just mature enough. So I'll give you a little more of my unfolding on the journey, and then I'll come back to the grief.
Yep.
So when I was 20, I went to the University of Salzburg in Austria, and I studied psychology for 5 years, finished my degree there. And again, I found like an outside-in psychology. It wasn't an inside-out psychology. It was outside-in. It's sort of like studying the psyche through the mind and not studying the psyche through God or the soul. So it was sort of like not satisfying, you know. It was cool. I'm glad I have the theoretical framework of how the brain works and how personality works and everything like that. But Carl Jung was only mentioned once in a introduction to psychology or history of psychology class. You know, there wasn't any mention of soul. They're trying to squeeze the soul out of psychology and make it a science of human behavior. So I was very, very unhappy still, even after long years of study, and came across the work of David Hawkins. And he was the author of Power versus Force and Letting Go, among other books, and that completely blew my mind. So Carl Jung being sort of like the first person really waking me up, David Hawkins being the second person completely breaking me open. So I burned half of my library after I read his books. I completely thought like, wow, I don't have to study all this crap, because like it's way more simple than we are taught. So and I fell in love with that guy so much that I looked him up on the internet and said, where does this guy live? He lived in Sedona, Arizona. Thought like, wow, I never heard of that place. You know, there wasn't a lot on the internet back then about Sedona. So it wasn't like what it is right now.
Yeah.
And I thought like, okay, I'm going to fly over there and I'm going to see him twice for like, I'm going to be part of his lectures. And I loved it so much, and it was embraced so warmly by the people who were there that I decided to move here to study with him until he died. So when I was 24, I transplanted myself over to the United States from Austria, which brought a huge amount of grief for me, because it's almost like the 24 years that lived before just sort of were put into a different perspective. Like my parents, my upbringing, Hitler, my birth town, psychology, all the people that had that bullied me over the years. You know, it's just like, okay, now I'm in a totally different space. It's all me. It's like I'm have to make it work. And now I'm looking back too, and I have a huge amount of grief. And I liken it to a backpack that I was carrying that had a lot of stones in it.
Just heavy, right?
Shit, like really heavy stuff. And I thought like, well, I had no idea this was there when I lived in Austria, because I lived in denial, a natural self-protection. Because if I would have been aware of that when I was still back there, I probably would have been extremely depressed.
Yeah.
There's a part in the book, The Giants and the Smalls, where what you just described, Rit is walking down the path that's right behind Nick in his screen. And there's this moment where he's looking back, and I just saw you in that, where you're looking back at at your old life and everything that was there, what you thought was going to happen or could happen in the future. And now there's this huge level of uncertainty. But at the same time, Nick says it all the time: when nothing is sure, everything is possible. I don't think it was Nick that originally said that.
No, it wasn't.
I just credited Nick for that.
I think it was Marianne Dabble or Mary Dabble or something.
Yeah, somebody like that.
Somebody.
But the point is that I felt I haven't been through your experiences, but as you were talking, I'm like replaying my own life and seeing that and the feeling, that pit in your stomach, you know, the anxiety that just came up for me. That was pretty strong. So anyway.
Yeah.
You see the banner on the bottom here. I don't know if you can read that there. The having the awareness but not the tools. At 17, anger seems to be like, I keep hearing this, and maybe you can clarify your version of it, that anger is a secondary emotion to sadness or anxiety, right?
Yeah.
But often if we don't have the tools, but we feel the thing, we're aware of the thing, but we don't have the tools to do anything with it, there's often a lot of frustration that comes up with that. Absolutely. Is frustration and anger, are frustration and anger the same thing? And what is your take on anger?
Yeah, well, that's a very complex question, you know, because there's so many different expressions of those things with many different shades, you know, but it's definitely a defensive thing. You know, it's almost like, you know, when somebody kind of touches you the wrong way, you could call that anger, or you could call it defensive, or you call it frustrating. You know, it's just a reaction. You know, it's just a reaction, an aversive reaction to something. It's like, this doesn't agree with me anymore. My best expression, the best example would be a teenager, right? They have accepted an identity. They realize, I don't like that thing. I have to get rid of it. You know, and sometimes anger is the first energy that comes up with that kind of tries to purge that out of your system. You know, so like a secondary emotion, if you want to call it that, kind of shows up. And then you go on layers and layers and layers underneath all that.
Yeah.
And anger can show up again in a different flavor, you know, not in as much as of a reactive form, but, you know, so it's a complex question, but that's sort of like how I see anger.
I got that. Yeah, I get that we could go really deep on that just on a single show.
Anger's like Baskin Robbins. It's got like 31 different flavors. It's like the worst.
Yeah.
I can't ever choose.
So at what point did you become okay with not being okay with who you are, being okay with what is? Was there a point where you just created acceptance around your world? And if so, what did that do for you?
Well, that came really like gradually, you know, like I was always hoping for one light bulb moment, of one waking up moment in my life, always chasing the dangling carrot in front of my nose, you know, so that never happened. That full place of acceptance and the full place of forgiveness and that full place of coming home never happened. So that's really
even now.
Even now, I'm in I think it's still in a stage of homecoming, you know, in a stage of homecoming where I feel like it's coming close and I smell it and I feel it, and I am, there's certainty about it, you know, because it's almost like the times between the presence and the absence becomes shorter and shorter and shorter, whereas before there's long periods of absence where you're separate and lonely, and then you just keep walking the path, and you keep walking the path, and the distance between those highs and lows becomes smaller and smaller and
Yeah,
smaller.
beautiful.
So I still have moments where I feel like I'm falling out of grace, and I feel like, what the hell? How can somebody like leave me alone, sort of thing? But it's not what it was, you know.
Hey, if you ever feel that, you
Before it
just
was a
call
way of
us, man. We feel that all the time. So just
yeah,
call us.
yeah, right.
We'll get through it together. We'll be home together.
To be honest with you, even coming to a place of acceptance around that is important, because it makes you human. And it's like, if I was already always in my divine state, I would not know what it's like to be human. So I
Yeah.
think, if you would believe in past lives or pre agreements we make before we come here, but I have an agreement to dive into the human experience like 100%, like experience every little flavor of Baskin Robbins ice cream. You know, it's like,
Especially bubble gum.
So
Superman.
it's like, for me, it's like, okay, I'm going to experience the human experience 100%. Like, I'm going to be a psychologist and a spiritual being. Like, I'm going to understand the human psyche. I want to know what it's like to be human. I want to know what it's like to be depressed. I want to know what it's like to cry for years and years and years without knowing if it's ever going to end. You know, it's like, I had a commitment to dive into the shadow, like, really deep. So, and then I'm proud of that. But, you know, then you also have to realize, okay, you kind of keep doing this forever, because it's an infinite reality of diving into the human experience, into the human soul and the shadow. So at some point you have to pop your head out and say, I had enough. You know, it's like, I'm going to have fun now, and I'm going to enjoy life. And it's all good. You know, you don't have to keep working on yourself forever, because that can become a catch-22 as well. So
I want to revisit psychedelics for a minute. You know, I did some treatments during my journey. I did ketamine treatments. Wow. And there's this delusion, not delusion, the dissolving of self, right? Yeah. Like, you just completely dissolve, and you're in this world that, you know, with our own eyes you don't see, but you're in this world that you can't explain, and you're no longer you're all of it, you're everything, right? And then there's this reconstituting of yourself, of pulling back and coming back in yourself. There's some learning inside of that, you know, I'm going to be okay. I'm always going to come back to here. And what I hear, and when you say, you know, you can't always be working on yourself, sometimes you have to step back, is that sometimes there's that reconstitution of dissolving yourself into creating yourself, and then reconstituting, and then dissolving and reconstituting. And it never ends. It's just like the gap between the two just shortens. Like, you're able to do it quicker and quicker. Is that accurate, or do you have a version of that?
No, that's absolutely true. You know, I think psychospiritual is what I call what I do. I don't love that term, by the way, you know, because it sounds like so like clumsy, but it kind of reflects kind of how I think and how I see the world, to be of service to people, because I don't want to conflate things that actually have more truth value when they're actually claimed separately. Like, psychology and spirituality has overlap, but they're also not the same thing. So what you're saying here is like, okay, you go back into oneness, unity, consciousness, this like complete, like falling away of separation, and then you come back here and you put the pieces together again and you integrate. And that's what psychology is. It's like the science of relationships. You know, it's the science of how things work together in synergy. So yes, absolutely.
A picture, Legos, right? We take all these Legos, we dump them out, we build something out of it, then we take it all apart again and dump it out and build something out of it. And so you're like constantly taking apart, pulling back together. And I just had the thought, you know, we can only go so far, or as far as our ego will allow. Like, is there more that could be said about that for somebody that's maybe doing this work? Is that they get hung up on their ego or their culture or their beliefs or values or perceptions, keep them from exploring anything beyond those perceptions.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you cannot transcend only, you have to also transcend and include. So it's like, you know, you kind of go beyond, and then you go back and pull with you the ego part, or whatever that is, whatever you call it, and you integrate it back into this new version of the Lego structure or personality or being state that you now have, you know. So, and you can't do it all like in one go. It's like, yeah, you can only go as far as your ego allows you. It's true, because you're always going to face resistance in some ways, and there's something to be learned from resistance as well. There's also wisdom in it as well, because sometimes you're just not ready yet to have things be fully revealed to you. Otherwise, you probably choke on a piece of Baskin and Robbins ice cream. You shouldn't have eaten that much, you know, like, you can't have that much joy yet. You have to earn the capacity to receive. was like having a container, like a glass or something. If you pour in too much into a small glass, you're going to actually shatter. And some people experience that with psychedelics and with other self-development tools. When they're trying to push too hard too soon, they actually fragment and disintegrate and then end up being worse than they were before, you know.
So what would you advise somebody that's maybe trying to push? I've had people do that in my programs where they have a small win, they do well in one area, and then they take on something huge, and it's like, oh crap, because now I'm playing a little bit of damage control because they've taken on so much that it's almost beyond their tools and their abilities that they're unraveling. Like it's so big. This is where, you know, Ryan, you and I talked about incremental growth of increase the chalice, increase the cup, and then add to it. Can you speak to that a little bit? Like, what would you advise?
It's like wanting to grow up too fast is a sign of immaturity, and that's where the elders come in, like you and Ryan, me. Like, if you want to consider me an elder, but people who can guide you on your journey.
Well, so if you're going to consider us, then you're by far bigger elder than we are. So,
like, I look up to people. I consider people an elder, and other people look up to me an elder. So it's all relative. But you know, it's important to have people on your journey that can kind of guide you and hold your hand. Because when you're young and when you don't have a clue about this journey, then you will trip yourself up and you will try to push too hard and you will do things that will actually harm you, you know. So it's important to have people that have wisdom. Like, there's a difference between intelligence and wisdom. You can be smart, but it doesn't mean you're wise, you know. So wise means that you have had a long time here and you have learned a lot and you've seen a lot and you've learned from it with humility, right? Humility. Without humility, you can't grow. Otherwise, pride is running the show. Pride's running the show. Ego is running the show. So wisdom means like you have allowed yourself to be patient and endure some amounts of suffering and pain and discomfort that's good for you. You have to learn how to grow from things like that, right? So it's just, you can't just do it all in one fell swoop. It's not possible, you know?
Yeah. There's a Geico commercial. I think it's Geico. And I think I've referenced this before, but it as you're going through the work and you have these wins or this aha moments, or the awareness comes in and you kind of get through it and you're like, yeah, you feel like there's this almost like this new sense of like, I don't know, over self-confidence, right? Like, I got this. And in this Geico commercial, there's this guy on, like, I think it's like in like Venice Beach or something like that, and he's juggling chainsaws in the air. And this one guy's like, I got this, to his wife. He's like, come on, throw one my way. I got this. Throw one my way, right? And these chainsaws are like running chainsaws. This dude's just juggling chainsaws, and the guy wants him to toss him one to, you know, to juggle as well. We get these little victories or these little moments where, you know, we see something, we maybe break it down, and then we grow through it, and now we think we got this, we can do anything, and then boom, the realization, right? You can have this, like, I don't know, false sense of, I don't even know what you would call it. Maybe Nick, you help me out of like this,
I just hear like false confidence, you know, false reach, right? Like you're reaching a little further than maybe you should. I've pulled my back muscles working out. It's like I thought I could do the thing until my body showed me that I couldn't, you know. It's like,
but then that's where you have like that support system and the people that you know, the elders, right? I have them in my life where something goes wrong, something's not happening like I thought. There's this like shattering, like you said, and it's like, they got to put it back together and then ask them what they've done and then work through it. And then it'll grow. Like, that's what the Giant's about. It's like, you're not perfect. Like, there's no expectation of like, you have to do it this particular way. It's what's working for you. What's your potential? What do you want to do? What do you want to have? Who do you want to become? There's no like, I don't know. There's probably a bit of ethics behind it, you know, and things like that. And being a good person is probably always a good thing. But you do you. We have these like this saying. Me and Nick always say, "You do you." You know, go be you. However you want to be you. And
I'll try not to add to the rest of that. As a single dude, yeah.
Anyway.
That's perfect. Yeah. I mean, it really is up to each of us. What I love about the deconstituting is that when you pull yourself back together and you rebuild yourself, when you're working with somebody like you, Daniel, is that you're putting pieces of that into you. You
Mhm,
learn something new in a book. Now, when you rewire, it
mhm.
it becomes a part of you. And now it's once it's ingrained, it's permanent. You will likely never lose that, the way the wiring works, right?
It's true. Yeah. Well, it's
Kind of
actually
like a broken bone too. Like when it heals, it gets stronger. So you break it. Don't go break your bones, people. But if you break a bone, it usually grows back stronger, and then you can do more. You can then have that, like you said, Daniel, that new sense, like where something else comes in that I can work on that's a little bigger. I can handle this. Break again, grow again.
yeah, that's very true. That's how it
Daniel, what were you gonna? Yeah, what were you gonna say there?
I actually forgot.
Okay,
I have
well,
so many thoughts going through my mind.
we're gonna keep going then.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so you just strengthen, like you're saying, Ryan, you just strengthen over and over again. You get better and better at it. Or once you've gained it, the laws of atrophy, how the body will atrophy. But with muscles, you don't fully lose that muscle. It just shrinks for efficiency until you start using it again, and then it starts pumping right back up. It's like riding a bicycle. You might not be very effective at first, but as you keep going, it fires right back up and it becomes efficient again. That's
Yeah.
why, if you had addictions in the past, you might shut those off, but at any point you want to pick that up and put flow back into it.
Mhm,
That pathway is still there. You created it. So
mhm.
I think people get this false sense that my old behaviors, thoughts, ways of being are never going to bother me again. I want to just shut them
Yeah.
off and I'm good. No, all you're doing is you're eliminating flow to those things.
Mhm. Yeah, it's like you're growing bigger in size in a way, in spiritual size and psychological size. It's almost like you're building an invisible infrastructure
Yeah.
that that is wealthy. You can see that as an inner wealth, like wisdom, and it outgrows the smaller ways of thinking. Like you become a giant rather than just thinking small and thinking in those old pathways that kind of are self-seeking and self-serving, right? So, and they're always there. You're right. The smaller you get, they will immediately pick up again when you shrink. But when you grow
Yeah.
big, they become silent. And at some point, you grow so big that your mind becomes actually kind of silent. Like a peaceful place to be in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Interesting. You shrink because you feel small and you go silent. You
Yeah,
grow to the degree that you grow silent because you're a giant, right? Like you're at peace completely in the world. And
yeah.
so,
And
uh,
I also think there's something to be said about being okay with being big and being okay with being small and not choosing one or the other, because
yeah, yeah.
a lot of my growth process has been inner child work, in a spiritual way, not in a psychological way, but like really like learning how to be okay with a very immature version of me inside of me that is impulsive, I want things
Mm,
right away. Like that is doesn't see the bigger picture in life, and becoming a really good parent for myself in that
mm.
way, like a loving parent that is wise and that knows the bigger picture, and always giving that back to me, showing that to me as a sign of self-love and self-acceptance.
Well,
So,
I'm gonna throw at you a couple of the other journeys and you pick up where you want here.
yep.
Whatever speaks to you. So our next journey in this would be gratitude, and then we go into tools of empowerment, where you
Mhm.
you reduce the chemical impact of emotions to get your brain back,
Yeah.
and then we go into uncertainty and abundance and vision.
Mhm.
Right. So any of those that speak to you, I'll let you just go with it.
No, let's just go one by one,
Yeah.
So let's take the
Let's,
first one. Say gratitude. I
yep.
heard. So
Let's go with that. How important is gratitude, or is
gratitude,
it?
gratitude would be a big picture thinking, a giant way of thinking, because it's showing you that you have to bow before something that's greater than you. You can call it higher power, you can call it God, the divine, so the supreme, whatever you want to call it. Gratitude means like you are really seeing that you have been given a gift, that
Mm,
you have been given Legos, and you get to put those Legos together the way you want them to, the best of your capacity. So
mm,
gratitude is a natural default. Like it's not even a human emotion. Gratitude is just a normal default in the human soul, because we always bow before what was created to us, because God is the greatest and it's infinite. So you're always going to bow and be grateful and be grateful, be grateful. So if you can assume that within yourself, you're actually ordering yourself within the greater scheme of the universe in the right way. It's almost like you're finding your place in the universe. I'm
gonna pull in abundance into that, because like we talk about gratitude and abundance, it's that gratitude becomes your ability to see the abundance. The abundance was always there. It's not something that comes and goes. It's always there. So gratitude is just the unmasking and the ability to see the abundance. It's like I didn't have to go create the Legos, right? They were there.
100%. Like abundance is a quality of the divine. When you experience God, you will immediately notice how abundant it is, and that it's just constantly showering you with blessing and blessing and blessing and blessing. And the reason why you sometimes don't experience it is because you're holding it back or you're not letting it in. So, but God, as in its nature, is always abundant. So that's why we want to become abundant too. We want to become God-like, right? So, and that's when you feel grateful, because it's like it's not coming from you and your separate sense of self. It's coming from the oneness of everything. That's always than enough. There's more for anything. It's like there's enough for the three of us and for everyone else on the planet. There's enough energy on this planet. There's enough food on this planet. There's enough of everything here. Just because we're not smart enough yet to think that way.
There
wasn't enough peanut butter the other day though. We ran out of peanut butter at Costco, and I cried.
You can always have more peanut butter.
I think it was Wayne Dyer. Wayne Dyer said that abundance isn't something you acquire, it's something you tune into. And so that's what I hear in this is our emotional state really dictates how we're seeing the world. And so if we go into the journey of empowerment and how to get back into your empowerment, this is where people know things. They're like, I know better, right? They'll come out of this emotional state and they'll be like, I know better, and I keep doing this, I'm so frustrated. But emotions are amazing at what they can do, because they'll override any kind of logic. Like you go into an emotional state, and I don't care what you know, unless you've been practicing your skill set around when emotions come up, they have the ability to take over you, cause you to do things that you under normal circumstances wouldn't do. And then you're left kind of cleaning up. And can you speak to some tools that might help people through emotions or your understanding of emotions?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I like to think of it in a way of alchemizing. And alchemizing meaning like you use something that's sort of like a more primitive element, and you refine it and you make something more beautiful out of it. So you take, for example, lead and you make it into gold. So any emotion is an energy. So I don't even want to be in a place of judgment around it, and just see like, okay, this is energy here, and we can use that energy to refine it and sublimate it and make it into something that's serving me. Like, because emotions are powerful. Suppressing them doesn't work, so you got to do something with them that's actually helping you step into a greater giant way of being with your feelings. So, and the only way how to do it is to really become bigger. You have to become a bigger space so those feelings can flow through you, and they're no longer trigger the hell out of you or make you reactive. You have to become apparent in a way, a big enough space, so you can have all these feelings inside of you and not push them away anymore. Because otherwise you always live like defensively. You want to, I have to avoid this, after that I have to eat more ice cream than I should, in order to avoid this. It's just like a house of mirrors. You get so lost in it, and there's only one way through, and that's really like facing them and not going away from them and letting them sort of teach you something about yourself.
This is huge. Like creating room for everything. This goes back to acceptance, that it is what it is. I can accommodate certain things. JP Morgan, I loved his version of it. I can accommodate or I can allow. But either way, whether you accommodate or allow, acceptance is simply, it is what it is, and there's plenty of room for it. So whatever the emotional state is, I've got room for that too. If I'm angry, I got room for anger. If I'm happy, I got room for happiness. If somebody wants to come in and impact my emotions, I've got room for that. Even the idea that I might have been reactive in that, I have room for that. Versus the house of mirrors is like always pursuing, like you say, you're inside and you're pursuing right and wrong. You're asking other people what they think is right and wrong. You're ignoring your self-knowing. And if you could just step out of the house of mirrors, you'll notice that, well, there's even room for the house of mirrors, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I give you just one example from my life. So my main emotion that I had to deal with in this life was loneliness and grief. Okay. So what do you do with this thing? It's like, because it's like a constant sort of brother or whatever following you around wherever you go, and you project it on everything. Oh, it's a lonely world. Like, oh my God, this is sad when I see this, you know? So it's like, how can I let those two things teach me? It's like, it's teaching me the way home, because if I suffer from separation, then I need to allow the solution inside of me, which is oneness, and that I am it. It's like, there's nothing out there that gives me what I want. This is like already a pre-conditioned space inside of me that I'm looking for, right? So you learn from duality. Duality, you know, House of Mirrors, you're not going to find the truth there. So you just have to learn from those reflections you see, so they guide you back to yourself with the capital S, right? So every emotion is an incomplete sort of fragment of a puzzle or a Lego that can guide you back into the greater. But it's almost like a microcosm within the macrocosm. So it's almost like you can see the small, and from the small, if you really see the divine in the small, you can also see the big in it as well. And that's how you break free from all of this.
And it's not that that we're stepping into something. Daniel Alexa, I'm going through his program right now, and he talks about there's nowhere to step to. You're not stepping into something. He says the only thing you step into is dog shit and showers, right? Like, so you're not stepping into things when it comes to this kind of work. And I love the capital S, by the way. That's powerful.
It's a big self, you know?
Yeah, you're uncovering, you're taking all that stuff that you put on as a defense, your identity, and you're peeling it away. And it's not like there's anything that isn't already there that you're discovering. It's just you're uncovering it so that it can be seen. It's when people get to peace, it's already in them. When they get to loving themselves, it's already there. It's just been masked by all this stuff, right?
100%. It's like there's the truth, and there's the derivative of the truth. You can call it the shadow. And even from the shadow, you can sort of like infer what the big self or the light is going to be, you know, because it's all like shadow is still sort of connected to the light, you know, but it's not the truth. Don't go for it, but it's still, you can learn from it. And like now, emotions being the shadow in that sense, you know, it still guide you back to this big self with the capital S, because everything comes from there. The light breaks into all these different kind of like spectrum, like different colors, you know, but the one source is always like the one that houses everything. It's the bigger thing.
Yeah.
So,
I see the giant's journey as not something you do out here. It's a within journey. It's a journey of going so far inward that you're becoming so okay with yourself, and then creating from that space that you start to expand and grow, rather than trying to get things out here that make you feel like you're expanding and growing, because in a lot of cases, that's just actually causing you to be confined, right? By whatever it is that you put on.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, this is beautiful, because the space that you're creating here with people is that, one, you're human, and self with a capital S is different from self with a lowercase s.
Yeah.
Like self with a lowercase s is really looking outside of itself for identity and what's right and wrong.
100%.
And so giving room to that is huge. And when people hear the term, you know, just let go, you know, heavy emotion comes in, well, let it go. And you can't, because like you say, it's part of you. Like that's part of my core. If I go all the way down to the foundation of everything, that has been there from the beginning. How do you just let that go? But there's another way to say, let it go. Like the word go means to let it run, to start, right? That people think I need to shut this off so I can grow. No, you don't. Let it run while you're building yourself and creating yourself in the direction you'd like to be. Like, there's nothing wrong with that being there.
100%. Yeah. Whenever we do black and white thinking, we always get lost. So I always like to think in threes. So like, what does letting go mean? Like, does it mean like pushing it away? Does it mean like trying to get ahead of it, like transcending it, you know, or does it mean to just be in the middle with it, you know, and just be non-attached rather than being detached or too attached? You know, you can get too close or you can get too far away, but you want to be in the middle somewhere, right? And that's the hardest thing to do. It's most people don't do it, because you have to actually be really present within yourself and just be present, like trusting and be patient. Like it's like you have to develop a present, like a giant consciousness in a way that makes you outgrow all those things. But you can get never rid of the human experience. Even when you're enlightened or whatever you want to call that state of being awake, you'll still have a human experience that follows you in some ways, because you're in this body. So at some point you don't have it anymore, and then you're not going to miss it. But you know, it's while we're here, we have to learn how to work with this and build relationships around this, right? Build a tribe around this, build relationships.
I'll miss this a little bit.
Yeah, the heart. Okay. It's like like I would say, the crack is where the light comes in. You want to celebrate your cracks and your flaws and your imperfections, because they make you relatable and make you lovable. So I try to share my imperfections, because other people feel like, okay, he's not just this spiritual dude, he's also extremely human and extremely flawed as well. So
yeah.
Yeah.
I want to inject here, and we're already at 50 minutes. Like, if you're good to go a little long today, I'd love to, just because of the topic here. But if you need to cut it off at an hour, we'll do that, and maybe we'll create another show. You good? Okay. So I want to inject comparison here, because I see comparison as two versions right off the bat. Maybe you see more as comparison in a way that I want to push myself to do more, and comparison in the form of I'm never good enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like there's two, like Steve Hardison would say, like two things can be true at the same time. It's really important to discern, like to know what is the truth. So like there's the light side to comparison, which is making you see your shortcomings and where you can be better or bigger or more giant. And there's a way how you can use it defensively and use it against you to harm yourself and to really be self-abusive, right? So same with any emotion. Like, you can look at one thing always in two different ways in life. So even with comparison, right? So you want to use comparison in a good way. But if you use it in the wrong way, it will actually be used against you and it will not help. So
yeah.
You probably know this already, but this is just how I work with it. Yeah.
I love asking rhetorical questions, man. Let's dive into them.
Yeah. You want to use everything as a fuel for your progress. Like everything, comparison, shame, anger, guilt, pride, whatever. Just use it. Use it. It's like use it as a rocket fuel. Yeah.
Yeah. Some people will say, man, I'm depressed, and I'll respond, this is exciting, right? This is awesome. This is perfect. There's a version of depression that I have that it's getting you to really look at reality. It's getting you to stop putting energy into things that aren't working. It's getting you to reflect and ruminate and hopefully move in another direction, right? 100%. So what a powerful tool. Instead of looking at it as this damaging thing, which we like, I don't want to feel this. I want to numb out. I want to run away from it. What you're offering here is no, face it. I was going to share earlier a story that I saw on TikTok the other day of Native Americans. They face their door toward the sun. So in the morning, when the sun rises, they're facing the sun and their shadow is behind them. And the concept there is that when you face the light, your shadows are behind you. If you face it the other direction, your shadows are in front of you. And that's what you're seeing. And so it's not that the shadows are bad, because you can kind of see what's in the way of your light. But does that bring anything up for you as you hear that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's not, for some people, it's not necessary to look at the shadow as much as for other people. For me, like, as I said, my agreement in this life was to look extremely close at the shadow, not because I need to do that for myself because it's so much fun, but because I need to do it to be of service to humans on this planet. So it's like, the more I understand the shadow side of reality, the more I can articulate it in a way to help other people set themselves free from the shadow. Okay. If you just look at the light, sometimes it can be too abstract for people. Sometimes people cannot hook themselves into that kind of truth with the self with the capital S right in a way. You almost want to learn how to talk a kind of different language, a human language, so you can build a bridge between the temporal reality and the infinite reality. So between the small self and the big self, the giant self and the small self. So I call it psychospiritual, and I see that as sort of like that as a bridge between ego, soul, and spirit. Okay, so
what would that look like, Daniel? Like, give us maybe an example. I'm trying to think of a bridge that.
Yeah, I mean, like, imagine, like, I always ask myself, what would I have liked to receive when I was 3 years old? What would I like to have received when I was 17 years old? I mean, what kind of mentor would I like to meet? Would I like when I was 24? Like, it's like, I always ask myself that, right? I would have loved to have a person that can build a bridge for me, that could say, hey, you know what? This is, I went through that. I was there. Like, I had experienced this confusion around spirituality and psychology and the reality of the ego and the shadow and all that. I would have loved to have a language of understanding that's based in the heart, but also in the mind, that's synergistic, that would have lit me up. Like that would have helped me to probably walk quicker on my path, hypothetically speaking. I don't know if that's even a possibility, but I want to be that person for people. I want to be that person where what younger Daniels or younger Danielles, can come and just like, hey, you know what? Like, you speak my language, like you touch my heart and you touch my mind. I understand, your love language that you speak. And I had to develop that by looking at the shadow very closely, because otherwise it's like going to school. If you not go to school, you're not going to learn that. So there's value in that. So
Yeah. I could
exactly
see
why we do what we do. Nick and I talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
Nick, hold your thought too. But
Yep, I got it.
we sit
Anchored
there
in.
all the time and we talk about that. Is like we're going through our own journey and having all these realizations and meeting all these amazing people like you, like Amy, like Amanda, like Julie, all these amazing people that are here with us right this second.
Yeah.
And like, man, where were you? But now you're here, right? Where were you? Man, I could have used you 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But that's how I feel. Like I have this like strong desire to turn around and help others so that their journey, like I don't know, like their journey just maybe is a little easier, or
100%.
that they can have some extra tools to be able to grow quicker, so it shortcuts it. Maybe like when I was a little kid, 1980s, playing Nintendo, they came out with the Game Genie, and you would stick it onto the Nintendo cassette, put it in, and you could put in codes, and you could like hack the system. That's kind of what I want to like Game Genie for others. Like, hey, this is the code where you can get like infinite lives and maybe win the game or beat the game.
But there's something to be said about that, I mean, I don't think you can skip anything in this life, because life is 100% fair. But there's a reason why people have mentors, and there's a reason why people go and pay coaches, and there's a reason why people go to 12 steps and things like that, because wisdom imparted by elders will speed your journey up, because you get stuff by osmosis. So it's like there is a miraculous transmission that occurs for you guys to be sharing what you do on your tribe, and for me to do the work that I do. So I help people have shortcuts as much as they are allowed in this universe. And I understand there are no shortcuts, but there is ways how to speed things up. Like when I was 30 years old, I found my first therapist that I actually clicked with, and it opened up new doorways right and left. I didn't even know I had any form of trauma until I was 30 years old, even though I studied it for like 6 years in school, So it's like, wow, this is another level that just was revealed to me, just because I had a human connection that I didn't have before.
Yeah. Well, so everything that we've hit on here is part of our root journeys. This is all the internal work, because when that is handled, then you can expand out. You can take skill sets and add them to that way of being, that mindset, right?
Yeah.
But if you're working on something, let's say you're creating into the world, you're going into the unknown, you're stepping into the abundance, you're creating with that. Richard Paul Evans calls it the mind of creation. Chaos is the mind of creation. You're taking that and you're molding something, and you have a vision, and you're imagining what you want to create. And then you run into a hiccup. I think of Edison, 10,000 ways that didn't work. And you run into one of those 10,000 ways that doesn't work. And then all of a sudden you're spun up and you're back in your emotions. You're feeling really low and small and insignificant and insecure. Then we put that on hold for a minute. We dive right back into the work that you're talking about here of getting reconnected with self and soul, and self with a capital S, getting reconnected with that, and then go back to creation and expansion. Because that journey, there's a thought that every explorer creates themselves before they go out into the world, because it's so unknown that they have to know who they are in order to accommodate that, right? Nobody makes us quit. Like I think of the Navy SEALs, they've got it figured out. They don't kick anybody out. People kick themselves out. And often we do that because of how we feel on the inside. We don't think we can, or we can't see ourselves beyond where we currently are. But that's part of the journey. So you just come back to what we just talked about. You work on the self, capital S.
Yeah.
And then you expand out. Can you speak to that? What comes up as you hear that?
Yeah, I think the only thing you can take with you after you shed this human body is really all of the things that you've learned and the things that you've assimilated in this life, So for me, that's the only thing worth doing is for me to grow in this way, to go out and to create, and then go back in and deconstruct, and to keep doing this and doing this and doing this, because I know that's for me the ultimate self-loving practice, and it's also the only wealth that I'm interested in this life.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Because it's like that's the only thing that nobody can take away from me, because nobody can argue with my experience in my life journey, and how much I've grown.
It's
Like,
not about the acquisition. It's not about all the things, right?
no,
It's about what you learn and develop inside you as you
absolutely.
grow.
That's your authority. That's your seat on the throne of where you are a king. You're a king in your own inner world. Like Ryan is a king in his own inner world. I'm a king in my own inner world. Because
Yeah. Yep.
reality, I'm owning it. This is the experience that it's the curriculum that God gave me before I came to this planet. I said, Danny, you're going to go this, and this, and this. So it's like, okay, sir, I do that. Yeah, I just do it. I'm going to do that to the best of my ability. And it's going to be different than other people's journey, but it's also having a lot in common. Like with the three of us, we have a lot in common. But we also have little different flavors, because we need to have different flavors so we speak to different people on this planet. Yeah.
Well, there's recent research that shows that the brain has a fingerprint, just like the fingerprint. Like there are no two brains that are the same. And it's because we can't have the same experiences. We just don't. We might have some commonalities and similarities, but we'll never see the world the same way.
Yes.
But as we go further here, there was a question, and we can answer this or we can keep moving forward, is moving through healing, how fast people move through healing, right? And how I hear that is the concept of, I want to heal, I'm in pain, I want to heal from that. They learn the tools and then they try and fast pace through that. I don't know if you hear it the same way or another way. Do you have you can speak to that?
And again, two things can be true at the same time,
Okay.
Fast, is there a way to speed it up or fast, or is it yes and no? I mean, you're gonna be learning at your pace that is right for you, and you have to come to a place of acceptance around that. And when you are in a place of acceptance around your healing journey and how fast it unfolds, then you actually then you are already healed. Doesn't necessarily mean that you've healed like from cancer or from Alzheimer's or whatever it is that you're struggling from, but for you to have self-acceptance around it and how it unfolds, that's already a healing on the inside, whereas it also can be healing on the outside as well. So, but
well, I love the action of your title here is transformation and healing, not healed.
Yeah.
Right. It's an ongoing thing. Like there's a distinction there. It's like
exactly. Yeah. An ongoing project that will never reach perfection in the human dimension. I will never be perfect in this dimension, and I come to accept that I am here. I'm healing. So I'm in love with my process. Process doesn't mean completion. Process means just unfolding. Being okay with that.
Ooh, that's big right there. I'm in love with my process, not my achievements. I'm in love with my process.
Not the mountaintop, but eating the ice cream, the Baskin Robbins ice creams along the road,
Yeah. On to flavor 16. Right. So, the growth journeys that we go through, and we're coming up on some time here, but speak to these as much as you feel you want to, that when we feel solid in here, when we love who we are and we're creating from there. I was told the other day that a goal is not where you're going. And I think it was Daniel Olexa that said this. A goal is where you're coming from. Yeah. So who you're being in the creation. A vision is the idea and the ideal that you have, but the goal is where you're coming from in the creation of that. And so when we look at the next 5 growth journeys, which are uncertainty, abundance, vision, nurture, and surrender, if you could breeze through those, and then the final journey for us is the legacy journey of why are you doing any of this, right? And how we thread that all through. But I'm going to let you just run for a minute on where you want to take that.
Yeah,
if that works.
Let's go through each one of those. Uncertainty is a necessary condition in this human experience, because if we had complete certainty at all times, there would be no place for us to learn and have karmic merit, so to speak. So uncertainty, you need to be accepting uncertainty while taking still action from a place of sort of like certainty, the best certainty you can come up with in the moment, to actually get a benefit or some form of wealth or some form of experience in this life that you need to have.
Or creating yourself. So you have certainty in yourself. So you versus certainty in what's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. Trusting your own experience and trusting life, even though life is a mess. Life's always going to be a mess, but inside you're driving the ship and you're sort of like sailing through uncertainty from a place of trust. That's really a beautiful place to come from. trust and love. It's like, it's the ultimate freedom, is for you to feel trust, even though there's no safety or security in the outer world. It's
Yeah.
inside.
Well, let's talk about vision, because as an explorer of your world now you've got that trust of self. You can get out there. You're aware of the abundance of the world. So you know that all the resources that you need are available. The people, the places, the things, they're all there. And now we go to a vision. Einstein said that imagination is more valuable than knowledge.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
can you speak to vision a little bit?
Yeah, I think I would like to combine vision with intuition, because I think vision and intuition share a lot of overlap. So when you actually have divine intuition, which is vision, then you actually have a map that transcends what you are capable of seeing with the physical eyes in this moment. So you
Okay,
actually,
yeah, let's hang on this, because now I got giddy a little bit. Intuition. I get the question all the time, like surrender. I don't get surrender. I don't understand surrender.
yeah.
As I hear you speak intuition, it's that knowing, that trusting, that stepping without a clear seeing of the
Mhm.
next step.
Yeah.
The surrender is the intuition. It's the nurturing and the surrender combined. Intuition is the activity that leads to the creation of the vision. Is there another variation of that you might have? And
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. I think a vision is sort of like, almost like you have a picture of the future in a way that you know to be true, even though you don't have evidence yet, right?
yeah,
So, and you're collecting evidence as you go, and that's again the uncertainty, right? You have to
yep,
sort of trust your vision, even though there's so much uncertainty. Maybe people spitting at you, or hating you, or telling you you're never gonna make it, but you still have to sort of like say, well, my vision is this, and God told me that, so I'm gonna go with that. And I've
yeah,
done this right for 40 years of my life. It's like I always had to do like the difficult path, even though the easier path would have been tempting too, but it would have probably killed me. So I was like, cannot do that. I gotta go this way because this is my vision.
yeah,
So, and that gives you confidence and trust doesn't come from the womb, coming out of the womb. I mean, it's learned. It's an acquired behavior as well in this human life.
yeah. Hugh Jackman, the Wolverine, right? Just he will do a puzzle. He'll spend months on a puzzle. He'll get it completed and then immediately destroy it.
Mm,
And just as a sense of, I can hold the vision, I can take the steps to the creation of that vision, but I don't need to put this on my wall.
mhm,
It's like there are going to be more visions, and he'll go grab another puzzle and do it again. And it's like
mm,
there is no end. Like if we think that one vision is it, which it could be if you choose that, but the reality is that there is no limit to our visions. There's no limit to our purposes. It's just,
mm,
Ryan says fractals. I love the word fractals. It's Mandelbrot. It's the name of our company. Is that there is no end. There are worlds without end. I think of the new picture that NASA just shared.
mm.
They said that, I think it was Neil deGrasse Tyson. He said if you held out a grain of sand and held it at arm's length up on the sky, that's the size of the picture that they took, and it was filled with galaxies, not just stars, but galaxies. I mean, you think about the vastness of the universe and worlds without end and uncountable. That's each of us inside of that. Like there's no limit to it. Yet, I think, what Steve Hardison shared the other day is we're free until we add a thought to it. It's
Mhm.
our thinking that limits our ability to create ourselves as more. It's our thinking that gets in the way of us seeing the unlimited potential that we have.
100%. There's no problem in this world. There's only problem in consciousness or in the mind, like Steve Hardison would say. So that's
Yeah.
what spiritual work is about: is cleaning ourselves up so much on the inside, so that our vision gets bigger and bigger and bigger of what's possible.
Yeah.
Because
Wow.
a lot is possible.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Tell
Mm.
us your legacy. Why are you doing this?
Again, coming back to what I would have needed when I was younger. So I'm really here to be a holding hand, uh, a trusting presence where people can come and feel like they're at home and a place of safety, and they have a vision of their own journey. So, because it's not about me, for me, it's just for me to be a catalyst for other people,
Hmm.
that other people can find their way home as it is true for them on the inside. So I'm pretty much just like a person that helps people walk themselves home, and I'm just a companion. Like, we're both on the ship, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of surrender, like all of that, a lot of adversity. So
Yeah.
why would you do it alone? Like, I did a lot of things alone in my life. And if I had wisdom for my younger self, I would say, look for help sooner, find your tribe sooner, like open up more, like don't doubt yourself as much. And, then in hindsight, always easy to say, but it's just like, this is who I've become as a result of my journey. And it's for me to pass it on. So really, that's my legacy. And to be speaking a language that a lot of people can understand, having a language of the heart and having a language of the mind, and using all that this experience has to offer to serve all of mankind. This really, it's not about me anymore. This is like, okay, now it's about sharing. And thank you for helping me share my message with your tribe. Thank you for letting me have a voice, and thank you for letting me serve. So this is
You're welcome.
40 years, in the making, and the next whatever 40 years is going to, for me to just be sharing more.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Is there anything that you feel like you wanted to share during the show that maybe you still want to bring up?
No, if you're listening to this and you feel like you're alone, you're not. Just join this tribe, or join whatever calls to you. Like, be in communion, be in connection, and trust yourself. Just love yourself as much as you can. This is the ultimate truth. Just love, 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 love always.
Yeah, I want to hit that word communion, right? The word community, communication. It all means to make ours, right? Instead of just being one, communion, communication, all of that means to take something and make it ours. And that's where having community, communion, communication is so important, because we're not doing that. I've got mine, I've got yours, right? But there's nothing in common. I just think there's beauty in that word that you just shared, that find your community where what is theirs is yours, and vice versa, right? Where you feel like you can grow.
100%. I think some of those things, some of the things we have to go through cannot actually be done alone, and some of those things are too big for one person to handle. I think there's divine grace in letting other people be your God at certain points in your life. I know that sounds strange, but let other people be your higher power for a little while until you realize your own truth. So it's like, I think there's things that are just too big for one person. So look for a community, look for communion, look for connection, and a lot of fun and dancing and singing along the way, because there's a lot of hard feelings that we have to experience, and we have to balance it out with lots of enjoyment.
I love it. Ryan, do you have some additional thoughts?
Yeah, you can add mind reader to your resume. I had written down, just before you said everything that you just said, I had written it down over here, and almost word for word, it was amazing that you talked about what somebody can do now. And you could be sitting at home going, okay, but yeah, but where do I start? And there's fear, there's worry, there's doubt, there's all those things that come in. I know, because it's me. That's what I experience.
100%.
And I just, for those that are wondering where to begin, just start stepping. It doesn't have to be a giant step.
Yeah.
It can be just a little step. Just start moving forward, and find a mentor. Find somebody like Daniel that will come along, and not just be a giant to you, but he's going through his journey as well. There's moments where we all feel small. I think we can, like, everybody can agree on that. There's been spots where I've been in my darkest, but I've learned a ton, and people think that I'm a giant, and I'm in my darkest moments, and they're just like awe-inspired, and that's what it's about, though, like helping each other and stepping in and filling a gap or a need, or helping others to move through their giant journey. But I put be a companion, and you nailed it. And so just remember, Nick says this, I'm going to steal his thunder.
Yeah, dude,
You're
do it.
you're right on time. You're exactly where you need to be,
Yeah.
and that you can be or have anything that you want. Just start stepping.
Amen.
Amen. With that, guys, thank you for a great show. I know we could keep going for hours on this. Daniel, thank you. we're going to send you a couple of gifts here just as our gratitude to you for what you've done. And so for those that are watching, go back and rewatch this, because it's amazing how much we miss in the dialogue. I miss it. You know, I have my way of seeing the conversation. So for me to go back, I hear things that I couldn't hear because of the space I was in. So I have a different listening. So go back through these videos and go with the listening that you have in that current moment, because you'll find things that you weren't expecting. And we have over 500 of these videos on our YouTube channel at Wake Up with Giants TV. So basically, we don't want you to get so sucked into where you're just learning all the time. We want you to go out and practice it. And like Ryan said, is go find your community, whether it's here or whether it's with Daniel, that companion. Go find that person or that group that's going to help you to grow in the way that you need. And that's going to look different for everybody. So we appreciate you. We hope you go make it a giant day, and we will see you in the next episode.
Love you too.
Yeah. Thank you.